old cliche, take it one day at a time, one game at a time, one practice at a time, and, invest everything into each day that you have, from a rest to everything that you can think of standpoint to where, we can be operating at the highest level we can play at.
What have you seen from Washington this year? Not the same team that they were last year, a little down, but always a good competition.
Playing their best baseball right now, probably of the year. They play really good at home. They've been winning 2 out of 3 at home each weekend that they've been doing that now for a little while. At the beginning of the year they didn't, but now lately they have been. They scored a ton of runs this last weekend at Arizona State, and I know the conditions were ripe for that. But still, they're playing really good baseball. They've got power in their lineup still, and they still have about 5 carryovers from last year that are really good hitters.
So, the Utah series, the offense is kind of clunky. After watching some tape, what do you feel like you guys can do better going into these last 6 games?
Yeah, just consistency. It's been the same theme the whole year. It's just you're trying to get guys that are in their first 100 to 200 at-bats hitting like they're in their 400 or 500th at-bat. And that's, it's kind of hard to make up experience when they don't have it. And so how do you do that? You work tirelessly trying to get those guys familiar with what you see on tape to where they can address their deficiencies and hopefully, get more consistently competitive at the dish.
You've mentioned that 100 AB threshold a lot of times now. Are there guys who have kind of hit that or come close to hitting that where you've seen them grow after they've reached that 100, 150 threshold?
Yeah, Bryce Betcher. Now he's past the 100 AB threshold, and he's probably getting closer to the next threshold, and he's starting to really swing the bat well, and you can see the difference there. It's just usually your first 100 at bats are spent your freshman year, and then somewhere in the middle of your sophomore year you start figuring it out as hitters, and it feels like no matter what class of a player they are, first year, second year, third year, fourth year player, the kids that we're talking about, they're all in that same boat. Instead of just it being outside their freshman year, it could be outside their third year already, and they still are trying to get to 100, 200 at-bats. And so, they're a little bit older, but they're not older in terms of experience.
This is kind of a more clerical question for me, but you mentioned earlier in the year about Brock Moore potentially moving into a starting role. Is that still maybe a plan, or did the injury just kind of derail that and you just want to get him back out of there in the bullpen?
No, he's starting to work his way back into that possibility. We're not there yet, but he's starting to work back into that as a topic of discussion for sure.
With Jackson Jordan coming back from injury too, just what's your confidence level in the bullpen now that you have Moore, Mullen, Jordan, Mercado still back there?
It's good, but Jackson's still not built up yet, and so there's that. And having Moore right now, he's starting to really go good, which is good to see. And so it may give you other options. It's a little too early to start speculating on some of that stuff.
Have you had any conversations about draft entries or anything like that, or is that a after the season conversation?
No, talking about the draft right now, trying to win a conference championship.
You mentioned one game at a time, but at this point of the year, can looking ahead to the postseason, can that get into the players' minds? Have you seen that throughout your coaching career? And if so, what do you do to make sure that isn't a distraction?
I don't think it is. It shouldn't be a distraction. They saw what happened to a couple of teams in our league last year that got left out, and so I think if those teams were thinking about postseason play and then they got left out, it was a pretty good example. You don't have to look very far to understand that you don't put things in the hands of committee members and feel confident about them. So you got to take it out of the hands of committee members. The way you do that is win games. So no, I don't. These guys aren't thinking about postseason and all that kind of stuff. That's down the road. They're thinking about winning on Friday night at Washington.
Grayson's been really good, especially against Oregon State and Utah. Just where do you feel like you've seen him kind of step up in recent weeks?
He's dealing with adversity a lot better, I think, than he did at the beginning of the year. I think you're seeing that he, at the beginning of the year, he's never started at this level. So kind of the same discussion that we have with the number of at-bats, the number of starts, there's probably a threshold there when you start really getting comfortable with the routine of a starter and all that. And he was moved in and out of that due to injury, not necessarily his, but others. And so, with Grayson, you're starting to see him, I think, settle into a good rhythm, which is nice. And he's just working through adversity better, I think.
Walsh, he's now one shy of tying the single season record set by Sabine last year. You've had him all for 3 years now, and you saw him as a freshman. Just did you see this type of development coming from him when he stepped on campus here?
Yes.
What's kind of gone into that development from him? Like how did he get to this level of being a all Pac-12 first baseman potentially?
He's a tremendous human being, tremendous kid. His family did a wonderful job bringing him up, first off. Second off, he's hungry and he wants to develop and he wants to learn, and he knows he's not perfect, and so he's humble in that way. Third reason is Jack Martyr and Brett Thomas and Marcus Hinkle. Those guys have worked tirelessly. Coach Thomas, when it comes to Brett's analytics stuff that he can put together to help assisting in development plans for Jack and for Marcus, has been tremendous, and J-Dub's grabbed a hold of anything that's put in front of him. He's a sponge. Awesome kid. He looks like a really intimidating person, and he can be at times, but when you're talking to him one-on-one, he's more of a teddy bear than an intimidating figure.
I'm going to talk to Drew Smith in a little bit here. Just how do you feel like he's done this year after having really high moments as a freshman last season?
He's done fine. I mean, he's not going to tell you he's having a career year, but I think he's done fine. He's playing second base now, and he's been playing second base very well. He's fought through a lot of injuries this year. And so I think that probably has something to do with why maybe the numbers aren't at the level that he wants them to be at. But I think he's done fine. He's been a really good locker room piece and a really good chemistry type guy. He's a hard worker. And so I don't think he'd tell you that he's having the best year of his life, or the expectations that he wanted to have met probably aren't being met quite yet. But, there's still a lot of room left in the year.
Talking about the threshold with Maddox, what have you seen from him? I mean, he was hurt at the beginning of the year, has put together a good freshman season, hit his 7th home run. Where's his development been the last few weeks?
Well, I mean, it's been there, right? And same thing with Ryan Cooney. A while back, Ryan Cooney broke the home run record, and then Maddox now broke his record. And so, it's interesting with the freshmen, because the freshmen are used to a 25 or a 30 game high school schedule. Well, we're well past that now. And so is their high school season done, and are they pretty well done, or do they still have more in the tank? Both of them are physically strong, so that's a good indicator that they have more left in the tank. Maddox is basically split half the year with Cooney. And so I'm hoping that they both have a lot left in the tank here down the stretch, because I can see them both. I know one of them's a starter at this point in time. I could easily see them both being starters moving forward.
Using Ryan as a defensive replacement too. I mean, just the confidence of two freshmen up the middle was like, how good are they defensively? What's the next step for them?
Well, the next step is for them both to be in the starting lineup, and that's going to be earned. And if they earn it, I'm not going to get in the way of them earning it. And so, wherever that can be, they can play into the infield spots, and they're both really good players.
With Bennett Thompson, his time being kind of out of the order, is that more of like the emergence of Meggers, or is he dealing with something?
Nope. Meggers has just earned more playing time at this point.
We talked a lot preseason about how Meggers led the team in RBIs during the fall and the spring. He's now hitting 2, hitting 4, whatever the case may be. Just where have you seen him from a guy who's getting his first career start to now being like a part of the middle of the order?
He kind of worked his way into that. I want to say that probably started with his work last year when he was redshirting, but at the same point, it probably carried over through the summer when he was I think he won some honors this last summer with his performance offensively, and so you had that as well. And then he had a great fall. He had a great spring, and so what we're seeing with the bat and the average and the high average and the offensive production has just been what we've been seeing. And so to have him and Bennett really going head-to-head at the catching position, both of them are really good. I wouldn't lose any sleep over writing either one of them in the starting lineup, and I honestly think that Bennett actually has probably a lot more in the tank and what he can do, because we've seen it. We saw him go off at the end of last year. When's that going to happen? Maybe this last at-bat that he just had this last weekend is going to assist in that push. We sure hope so, because we need more push offensively. If there's one thing that I think this club can benefit from, it would be more consistent offense. And they're still scoring some runs, but it seems like they're scoring runs pretty much via the long ball versus a sustained offense. And Bennett's proven to be a guy that can hit a long ball, but he can also sustain an offense by stringing hits together, which is good. So I think there's a lot of value in Bennett, and I hope that he earns more and more playing time, like his last swing that he had last weekend as a pinch hitter. Sure helped his cause in the discussions we're having this week in our office.
I haven't asked you about Hawk in a while, but now we're almost near the end of the season. Just what's it been like to have him on staff throughout this season so far?
he's a pretty composed guy. He doesn't get too high or low. I mean, he's used to pitching in front of 50,000 people at Dodger Stadium, or in St. Louis. And so you're talking about two of the greatest baseball cities in the country that he's actually pitched on those mounds and contributed and knows what that feels like. He's coached in Omaha and coached the pitching staff at Cal State Fullerton in Omaha, and he acts like it. This isn't a young thing for him. He gets it. He rubs off on the other guys, and the more effect that he has on the other guys, and I think the better that they'll do. And I think that's why you've seen some real good progress in a lot of the pitchers.
A lot of the pitchers have mentioned the mental side as like a huge positive for them.
Yeah.
With talking through Hawk. How do you feel like Hawk's experience at the MLB level, like you said, at Dodger Stadium, and how do you feel like that has helped him kind of just tell that message mentally?
I think that, and I think he's a big believer in what Brian Cain has to offer. Brian Cain's our, sports performance coach here, and he's a guy that has helped us with a lot of the mental game. He learned under Ken Ravizza, that was legendary, and Ken learned under, Dorfman. And so when you're talking about guys that went through that lineage, that's the lineage of mental game. And so with Hawk, I've always been a big Brian Cain guy. Hawk's a big Brian Cain guy. And the messages that Brian presents to our athletes are tremendous, and to get reinforced on a daily basis from Coach Hawk or any of our coaches just continues to help out Brian's message in the locker room.